There are specific nights, specific moments in time when what is delayed can finally be released. And March 29 is one of those nights. I know how that sounds. I know some people will hear this and think it's just another message about motivation or positive thinking. But that's not what this is. This is about something deeper, something I learned when I was operating on the other side, in places where spiritual timing, financial control, and invisible systems were not just beliefs, they were strategies. I wasn't always free. There was a time when I was deeply involved in occult practices, and one of the primary assignments we focused on was controlling financial flow, not just money itself, but timing, delays, blockages, missed opportunities. We understood how to slow things down just enough to frustrate you, to keep you almost there, but never fully breaking through. And one of the things we tracked very closely were specific nights. Because there are moments when spiritual resistance weakens, moments when what has been held back can be released. And March 29 carries a pattern I've seen before. A pattern where financial delays can begin to break if the right actions are taken. But here's the part most people don't understand. Nothing shifts automatically. Just because a window opens doesn't mean you walk through it. Most people will go through this night like any other night. They'll sleep, scroll, worry, and wake up to the same cycles, the same limitations, the same unanswered prayers. But for those who understand what to do, this night can mark a turning point. I've seen people come out of long seasons of financial stagnation simply because they aligned themselves with the right declarations at the right time. Not randomly, not emotionally, but intentionally. So tonight, I'm going to show you exactly what to do on the night of March 29 Wayu, how to confront financial delays, how to break blocked income, and how to position yourself for movement. Because delays are not always permanent. Sometimes they're waiting for the right moment to be broken. Before you can break financial delays, you need to understand how they actually work. Because delay is not random. What I'm about to explain is something I learned from the inside. When I was involved in the occult, we didn't just try to stop people completely. That would be too obvious. Instead, we specialized in slowing things down, delaying answers, postponing opportunities, causing just enough interference to keep someone stuck in a cycle of almost, almost getting the job, almost closing the deal, almost receiving the money, but never fully stepping into it. We called this controlled stagnation. And here's the dangerous part. Most people adapt to it without realizing it. They begin to expect delay. They normalize struggle. They start saying things like, it just takes time, or maybe it's not my season, not realizing that something unseen is influencing the timing of their outcomes. Because delay feeds on agreement. The moment you accept stagnation as normal, you give it permission to stay. I've seen people who were positioned for major financial breakthroughs, but at the last second, something would shift. A decision would be delayed. A payment would be postponed. A connection would go silent. And from the outside, it looked like coincidence. But it wasn't. It was interference. And this interference doesn't always come with chaos. Sometimes it comes quietly, subtly, in ways that feel logical, reasonable, easy to justify. That's why it's so dangerous, because you don't fight what you don't recognize. Now, here's where March 29 becomes important. There are moments, specific windows, where these patterns weaken, where the systems that enforce delay lose their grip, even if only temporarily. And when that happens, what was once blocked becomes vulnerable to breakthrough. But again, it's not automatic. If you do nothing, the delay continues. But if you confront it intentionally, strategically, that's when things begin to move. This is why understanding the system matters. Because once you see the pattern, you stop cooperating with it. You stop speaking delay. You stop expecting delay. You stop accepting delay. And when that agreement is broken, the system begins to collapse. In the next chapter, I'm going to show you the exact moment during this night when that window is strongest and what you must do in that time to break the cycle once and for all. Now let me take you deeper, because timing is everything. There is a specific window during the night of March 29 where resistance is at its weakest, a period most people ignore, sleep through, or waste without realizing its significance, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. I know that might sound unusual to some of you, but where I used to operate, this window was never ignored. It was studied, monitored, used strategically, because it's a time when distractions are low, human activity is minimal, and spiritual focus becomes sharper, whether people are aware of it or not. We understood something very clearly. What is spoken during that window carries weight, not because the clock itself has power, but because of the stillness, the alignment, the lack of interference. While most of the world is asleep, there is less noise, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And in that quiet space, declarations become focused. Intent becomes stronger, and resistance becomes easier to confront. This is why many people wake up during these hours without knowing why. They feel restless, alert, unable to go back to sleep. It's not always random. Sometimes it's an invitation, an opportunity to engage at a time when what has been delayed can finally be addressed without distraction. But here's what most people do wrong. They wake up, check their phone, scroll through messages, maybe worry about their problems, and then go back to sleep. And just like that, the window passes. Nothing changes. But for those who recognize the moment, everything can shift. Because during this window, you are not reacting, You are initiating. You are not waiting, you are confronting. This is where you begin to speak against delay with intention, where you declare movement where there has been stagnation, where you break agreement with every pattern that has held your finances back. And consistency here is powerful. Even one focused night can begin a shift, but when you engage with clarity and intention during this window, something begins to move beneath the surface, not always immediately visible, but undeniably real. I've seen people dismiss this timing and remain stuck, and I've seen others take advantage of it and step into sudden movement. The difference, awareness and action. So on the night of March 29, don't treat this like any other night. Set your intention now. Prepare yourself to wake up or stay up during this window, because in the next chapter, I'm going to show you exactly what to say and how to say it, so that financial delays don't just weaken, they break. Now, this is the moment where everything becomes practical. You understand the system, you understand the timing, but none of that matters if you don't speak, because silence maintains delay. What I'm about to give you is not just words. These are targeted declarations, focused, intentional, and designed to confront financial stagnation directly. When spoken with clarity and consistency, they begin to dismantle the patterns that have been holding your income back. But before you say anything, you need to shift your posture. This is not begging. This is not hoping. This is not emotional repetition. This is authority. When I was on the other side, we could always tell the difference between someone who was desperate and someone who was deliberate. Desperation sounds loud, but it carries no weight. Authority is calm, direct, and unwavering. So when you speak, speak like you expect a response. Now, during the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. window on March 29, I want you to begin with this. Every system of delay assigned to my finances, break now. Say it slowly, clearly, don't rush it. Let every word land. Then continue. I reject every agreement with stagnation. I cancel every pattern of almost in my life. This is important because, as I told you earlier, delay feeds on agreement. When you reject it out loud, you remove its permission to stay. Then you move deeper. Every blocked income, every delayed payment, every withheld opportunity, be released now. As you say this, don't just repeat it mechanically. Think about the areas in your life where things have been stuck. Bring them into your awareness and confront them directly. Because specific confrontation brings specific results. Now, here's where most people hesitate, but this is where authority increases. I step into alignment with provision. I declare movement where there has been delay. You are not just breaking something, you are replacing it. Nature doesn't tolerate emptiness. If you remove delay, you must establish flow. If you cancel stagnation, you must declare movement. And finally, You seal it. What has been held back is released. What has been delayed begins to move. It is done. Pause after that. Let the silence sit for a moment, because something has just been set in motion. Now listen carefully. This is not about how long you speak. It's about how focused you are. Even 10 to 15 minutes of clear, intentional declaration during that window can be more powerful than hours of distracted repetition. And if you feel resistance, distraction, doubt, tiredness, that's not random. That's pressure. It means something is being confronted. Don't stop. Push through it. Because this is the moment where most people quit, and where the breakthrough begins for those who don't. In the next chapter, I'm going to show you what to expect immediately after this night, because the signs of movement don't always look the way you think. But if you know what to look for, you'll recognize the shift the moment it starts. Chapter 5. Now listen carefully, because this is where many people get confused. After you've done the declarations, after you've engaged that 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. window on March 29, you're going to expect something to happen. And that's natural. You're going to look for immediate, visible proof that everything has changed. But here's the truth. The first signs of movement are often subtle. And if you don't recognize them, you might miss the fact that your breakthrough has already begun. When I was on the other side, we understood this clearly. We knew that once a system of delay was challenged, it didn't always collapse instantly. It would start to weaken, to lose coordination, to malfunction in small ways before it completely broke. And those small disruptions are your first signs. You might notice a sudden sense of clarity. Decisions that once felt confusing now feel simple. You know exactly what to do next, and there's no hesitation. That's not random. That's alignment beginning to take place. You might also notice communication shifting. Someone who was silent reaches out. A delayed message suddenly comes through. A conversation that was postponed finally happens. Again, this may look small, but it's not. It's movement. Then there are financial indicators. And no, it's not always a large amount at first. Sometimes it's something minor, an unexpected refund, a small opportunity, a delayed payment finally being processed. Don't ignore that. Because small releases often signal that larger ones are being prepared. Another sign is resistance, but in a different form. Instead of quiet delay, things may suddenly feel active. Situations that were stagnant become busy. You're faced with decisions, options, even pressure to act quickly. This can feel overwhelming if you're not ready for it. But understand this chaos is not always negative. Sometimes it's the system losing control. I've seen this happen many times. When delay breaks, there is often a short period of reordering. Things move quickly, opportunities overlap, decisions matter more. And this is where people either step into breakthrough or fall back into old patterns. Because if you hesitate, if you go back to fear, if you start doubting what you declared, you can slow the movement that has already started. But if you stay aligned, if you stay decisive, focused, and intentional, you begin to ride that momentum instead of resisting it. Now, here's something very important. Not every sign will look positive at first. Sometimes, before a major shift, something old gets exposed. A weak connection breaks. An unreliable source of income disappears. A situation that was never stable finally collapses, and that can feel like loss. But it's not, it's correction. Because anything that cannot support where you're going has to be removed before something better can take its place. So don't panic if something shifts unexpectedly. Ask yourself, is this clearing space? Because often that's exactly what it is. This is why awareness matters so much. Because when you understand the process, you don't misinterpret the signs. You don't quit in the middle of movement. You recognize it and you stay with it. In the next chapter, I'm going to show you what actions you must take after you see these signs, because movement requires response. And how you respond determines whether this becomes a temporary shift or a permanent breakthrough. Now, this is where everything becomes decisive. You've made the declarations, you've engaged the window, you've started to see the signs of movement. But here's the truth most people never hear: movement alone is not enough. Because what begins must be responded to correctly, or it can slow down just as quickly as it started. When I was on the other side, we didn't just initiate delay, we watched how people reacted when things finally started moving. And more often than not, they sabotaged their own progress without realizing it. Not intentionally, but through hesitation, fear, and old habits. So if you want this to become a real, lasting breakthrough, your response must be different. First, move quickly when clarity comes. When you suddenly know what to do, do it. Don't overthink it. Don't delay. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Because clarity is part of the breakthrough. It's one of the ways movement shows up. And if you hesitate, you create a gap, and delay can try to enter through that gap. I've seen this happen too many times. Someone gets the opportunity they've been waiting for, but instead of acting, they question it. They analyze it. They wait too long. And the moment passes. Not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't acted on. Second, break agreement with fear immediately. As things begin to move, fear often tries to come back, just in a different form. What if this doesn't last? What if I make the wrong decision? What if it goes back to how it was? Those thoughts are not harmless. They are attempts to pull you back into the same pattern you just broke. So when they come, don't entertain them. Don't negotiate with them. Replace them. Speak what you declared against. There is movement. there is provision, there is stability. You are reinforcing the new pattern. Third, be disciplined with what flows in. This is where breakthrough becomes structure. When money starts coming in, whether it's small or significant, you must handle it differently than before. Not emotionally, not impulsively, but intentionally. Because stability is built through alignment, not just arrival. In the systems I used to be part of, we relied heavily on people mismanaging increase. Because if they mishandled what came in, it created instability, and instability opened the door for cycles to restart. But discipline closes that door. It protects what is being built. And finally, stay spiritually consistent. Don't stop just because you see results. This is one of the biggest mistakes people make. They push hard until something shifts, and then they relax completely. But consistency is what turns a moment into a lifestyle. You don't have to repeat everything with the same intensity every day, but you must stay connected. Keep declaring, keep aligning your words with what has started. Because what you continue to speak, you continue to sustain. Now, let me say this clearly. You are not just breaking delay for one moment. You are establishing a new pattern, a pattern where income flows, where opportunities align, where delays no longer control your outcomes, and patterns are maintained through response. So don't treat this casually. Don't go back to old thinking. Don't go back to hesitation. Don't go back to agreement with lack. Because you've already crossed into something different. And if you respond correctly, you won't just experience a temporary shift. You'll step into something that continues to build. In the final chapter, I'm going to give you a direct challenge, something simple but powerful that will determine whether this breakthrough continues or fades. Because what you do next matters more than you think. Now, this is it, the part that determines everything. You've heard the strategy, you understand the timing, you know what to say and how to respond. But none of it will matter if you don't decide. Because breakthrough is not just something you experience, it's something you commit to. And most people never reach this point. Not because it doesn't work, but because they never fully decide to follow through. So here's what I want you to do. For the next 3 days after March 29, you are going to stay locked in, not casually, not halfway, but intentionally. Each morning when you wake up, before distractions, before conversations, before anything pulls your attention, you're going to declare, delay is broken, movement is established, what was blocked is now flowing. Say it with clarity, say it like you mean it, not rushed, not distracted. Then at night, before you sleep, you're going to reinforce it. I remain in alignment with provision. What has started will continue. These are not just words, they are reinforcement. Because what begins on one night must be strengthened in the days that follow. Now listen carefully. During these 3 days, you must also be aware of your behavior. Watch how you speak. Watch how you think. Watch how you react. Because this is where patterns either stabilize or try to return. You may feel moments of doubt. You may feel the urge to go back to old thinking. You may even be tempted to say, maybe nothing really changed. That's the test. Not a test to discourage you, but a test to reveal whether you're going to stand on what you declared or fall back into what you're used to. And this is where most people fail. They start strong, but they don't sustain it. They declare, but then they contradict their own words. They see small movement, but they don't treat it as the beginning of something bigger. But you're not going to do that, because now you understand something deeper. You understand that breakthrough is not just about one moment, it's about what you build after that moment. So during these 3 days, when you see movement, acknowledge it. When you feel resistance, reject it. When you have clarity, act on it. Stay aligned, stay intentional, stay aware. Because if you do this correctly, these 3 days will not just confirm your breakthrough, they will establish it. And after that, you won't be trying to get out of delay anymore. You'll be operating from a place where delay no longer has authority over your life. So this is your decision, not tomorrow, not later, now. Are you going to treat this like information, or are you going to treat it like instruction? Because what you do in the next 3 days will answer that question for you. And it will determine whether this moment becomes something temporary or something that changes your financial direction completely. There is a moment, and I want you to understand this clearly. There is a moment when delay no longer has the authority it once had over your life, not because challenges disappear completely, not because everything becomes perfect overnight, but because something inside you and around you has shifted in a way that cannot be easily reversed. This is what I call the point of no return. When I was on the other side, we recognized this moment immediately. It was the point where a person stopped reacting to delay and started overriding it, where the same tactics that once worked, hesitation, confusion, fear, postponement, no longer produced the same results. It was like the system lost its grip. Opportunities would come, and instead of second guessing, the person would act. Decisions would need to be made, and instead of fear, there would be clarity. Money would begin to flow, and instead of mismanaging it, they would handle it with discipline. At that point, interference became ineffective, and that's where you're heading. But here's what makes this moment so powerful. It doesn't always feel dramatic. It often feels normal. You simply begin to move differently. You stop overthinking everything. You stop expecting things to go wrong. You stop preparing for disappointment. And without even realizing it, you've stepped into a new pattern, a pattern where movement is natural, where provision is expected, where delay is no longer the default. Now listen, this doesn't happen by accident. It happens because of everything you've just done: the declarations, the timing, the response, the consistency. All of it builds toward this shift. And once you reach this point, something very important changes. You no longer need to fight delay the same way, because it no longer has the same access. Think about that. The thing that used to control your outcomes no longer controls them. The patterns that used to repeat stop repeating. The cycles that kept you stuck lose their structure. And from that place, you're no longer trying to break free. You are free. Now, does that mean you stop being aware? No. It means your awareness becomes maintenance instead of survival. You're no longer constantly pushing against resistance. You're simply maintaining alignment. And that's a completely different way of living. I've seen people reach this point and everything about their financial life changed. Not just their income, but their mindset, their decisions, their confidence, their discipline. Because once delay loses its power, everything else begins to stabilize. And here's the truth most people never realize: this point is available to you. Not someday, not years from now, but as a result of what you've started right here. So don't underestimate this moment. Don't treat it like something small, because what you've stepped into is not just a temporary shift. It's the beginning of a completely different pattern. And once that pattern is established, going back becomes very difficult, because you've seen what movement feels like. You've experienced what alignment looks like. And you've recognized that delay was never meant to define you. So from this point forward, you don't just hope for better, you operate from it. Because delay has lost its power and you have taken it back.